I am Greg Chambers. I am the son of Orville and Gladys Chambers. I am the pastor of Eastridge Church of the Nazarene. I am the father of Lee, Greg Jr., Katie, and Jennifer. I am the grandfather of Avril, Amity, Henry, Claire, Brooke, Samantha, Cameron, Cademan, I started to say Cameron, Cademan, and now, as of Tuesday, Enzo Zolani. I'm calling him End Zone. We have not seen him yet. I am an uncle. I'm a great uncle. I am a son-in-law. I am a brother-in-law. I am a brother. I try to live a life of high integrity. I try to be honest in all my dealings. I try to be fair in judgments. If I have to drop the hammer on a situation, I try to be fair in dropping that hammer on the situation so that nobody gets hurt or gets offended. I try to do what is best for the group as a whole and not just for one person's needs. It has to supply and go to everybody to help them out. As Popeye the Sailor Man used to say, I am what I am, and that's all that I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Toot toot! Suppose I wasn't going to be here today, and it was unavoidable and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And at the last minute I called somebody and said, I want you to go to the church in the morning and give a message to my church. Tell them that Greg Chambers sent you. Well, that would not necessarily suffice because, you see, I did a check online. There's 128 Gregory Lee Chambers in this country. Some of their credit got messed up with mine a few years ago. There's also some aliases on my credit report of some names that I'd like to find out, but you got to pay to find out who they are and how they got on your credit report. So I would have to say to that person, or that person might say to me, who should I tell them sent me? Well, Greg Chambers sent you. But there's 128 Greg Chambers in this country. Who should I say that sent me? Greg Chambers, your pastor, sent me. Say I needed to get a message, say to Jennifer, that something happened, we couldn't get home, and I couldn't get a hold of her, and I sent somebody to her, and they would say, Greg Chambers sent me. Greg Chambers who? Greg Chambers, your father, sent me. Say I wanted to send a message to a friend of mine. Greg Chambers, the guy said, well, I know 4 or 5 Greg Chambers. Which Greg Chambers sent you? Greg Chambers, who is your good friend, sent me. You see, that describes who I am to that person. I am who I am, and that's all that I am. Popeye the Sailor Man. Toot toot. Now let me get to the scripture this morning. I gave that for some understanding. Exodus 3:14, God says, I am has sent me to you. God is the I am, the great I am. If you're familiar with this story in Exodus chapter 3, Moses is talking to God. The burning bush is there. It got Moses' attention. He was giving Moses a task. Go and get the Israelites freed. They had been in slavery for years and years and years, and they needed to be freed. They had prayed to God. They had begged Him for mercy to get them freed. It was necessary that they be freed. And nothing had worked. But God had heard their prayers, and as they cried out, He saw, I'm going to get Moses to go take care of this for me. And so Moses looks at God and says, who should I say sent me? Now, I've got to tell you, I did not understand that for a long time. But in doing a bunch of studying here, I found there's about 20 different names for God. Did you know that? God our protector, God our deliverer, God our caretaker, God our comforter, God our guide. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of names for God. And as the Israelites were aware of this, they would refer to God for different things. God our help. I carry a stone with me as an example of God is with us. God is with us. It reminds me, God is with me. And so the Israelites had all of these things in their mind about who God was, and God was with them, and all these things. And so Moses was not asking a question that was out of line. He was saying to God, how are you being represented? How am I supposed to represent you to the Israelites? Who should I tell them has sent me? And so God's answer was, I am has sent me. I am the great I am. And so what God was saying there to these Israelite people was real simple. I am all of the things that you look at in one. I'm not just your helper. I'm not just your deliverer. I'm not just your comforter. I am everything that you need. And I have the power to deliver you from the hand of the Egyptians. And so as Moses went and started talking to the people and started sharing with them, the great I am has sent me, they begin to get this vision of how powerful and how wonderful God really was in their lives. And it became this absolutely amazing thing started happening, because as they started praying more, as Moses started going and talking to Pharaoh, miracles happened. I mean, horrible things started happening to the Egyptians that didn't happen to the Israelites. They were protected. God was there with them. The great I am. The great I am. I've looked at this for years and thought about, what does that mean, the great I am? It means that God is this all-encompassing being that cares for our total being. That no matter what we're going through, He's there with exactly what we need at that moment. Well, do some shouting if you want. I don't care. And we need to stop and think about that and think about how grateful we need to be. You see, we start going through a problem. And immediately in that problem, we start thinking, oh, poor me, woe is me. I need God to help me. I need God to get me out of this mess. I need God to deliver me, and I need Him to deliver me now. But somewhere in there, we forget that God can comfort us going through that mess. And so we start having this little pity party. I've been there, done that. Am I driving you crazy, Kurt, walking around here? Okay, good. I don't want to get out of the camera view, and people at home can't see me. You see, in our human limitations, we get tempted like the Israelites did at times to put up our own graven images. Now, I haven't seen anybody melting gold down and making a golden calf to put in their house. But sometimes we worship our pity parties. Sometimes we worship that doctor. Sometimes we worship that medicine. Sometimes we worship a good book we get a hold of that may seem to explain something. Sometimes we may worship our friends who are supposed to be there to help us. And what we tend to forget is God is the great I am. And He may work through a friend. He may work through a doctor. He may work through some medicine. But when we remember that He is the great I am, when we start giving everything over to Him, when we start totally depending on Him, He's going to start opening amazing doors that are going to work things out, that are going to put us right where we need to be at that moment. And touch our hearts and touch our lives and bring us back up right where we need to be, not just physically, not just mentally, not just spiritually, but the whole total package all put together again, because He is the great I am. Think about that. He is the great I am. I got to just glancing through the Bible the other day, looking at all the people that God was the great I am to. I immediately thought of Job. I've been looking at Job a lot lately. His life was destroyed. And yet he kept saying, I trust in God. Even if God slays me, I will trust in Him. He lost everything. And yet there he was. I will trust in Him. Man, his wife even turned on him. Told him to curse God and die. I didn't know wives were supposed to do that. I think it just shows the depravity that he went through and how low he got. God touched him. God lifted him up. God met his needs. I looked at Daniel in the lion's den. I don't know what I would do if a bunch of lions were there floating around me. I'd do some crying out to God. He never wavered in his faith. I looked at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. There they were in the fiery furnace that was, 7 times hotter than it was supposed to be? And yet, not even a hair on their heads were burned, because the great I am was there with them. You see, God becomes who we need Him to be at the moment that we need. Amen. And if we need some extra wisdom, He's there giving us extra wisdom. If we need some extra help, He's there. If we need financial help, and we have been faithful in our tithes and offerings, then we can go to God and expect Him to help us out of the bind. If you're not giving your tithes and offerings, don't go to God and don't come to me. Give your tithes and offerings and then go to God and come to me. There's times when we're feeling down and out on everything, and God becomes our encourager. You see, He is the great I am. He is all things. He is all things to us. Just let me ask you this morning, who is God to you? What are you doing with your whole life right now? You see, it's easy for us to sit around and start looking at all the bad things that are happening in the world and our personal lives around us. And nobody here does this, but it's really easy to spread cheap gossip. It's really easy to put out fake news stories. Let's call it that, fake news stories. But it's really hard to look up and depend on God, because that other guy is there just trying to destroy us and knock us down and kill us spiritually and mentally and financially in every way that he can. So this morning, who do you need God to be? Whoever you need today, He's there. Whatever you need Him to be, He's there for you. We've got some college students. Corey's back working with the kids right now and helping Marcy back there. And of course, Jesse's homesick. And we've got some other college kids that are going to be involved in the Tuesday night thing. And they go through some needs that they have daily at school. We've got people online this morning that need God for different things on any different day. The great I am. Let Him be that great I am in your life. You know, we run around the world looking for things when it's all right there in God. I've been thinking about the woman at the well. We're going to sing that song this morning in closing. I've been thinking of the woman at the well. She was seeking satisfaction through worldly things. And that's what you and I tend to do. I was frustrated about something the other day, and Marcia said, well, go sit down quiet somewhere and pray about it. Well, she was right. Stop being frustrated. Start praying. Stop looking at the world for your satisfaction. Start praying, and you'll find satisfaction in the things in the world that you have involved in will go a whole lot better.